Buy here cause it's the cheapest, because we abuse our labor, keep them part-time working 40 plus a week, no health insurance.
This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek. The new president of the Teamsters Union, Sean O'Brien, has recently met with Donald Trump, the past president, and Trump used that opportunity for a meeting to give a heads up that with Sean O'Brien, and this takes place at a very dangerous time in American history, the threat of a civil war. There are some people who say that they want a civil war if necessary, and growing attacks on labor and a growing social crisis, not just here, but internationally. And joining us today is John Palmer, who's a vice president of the Teamsters Union and has been fighting for democracy and fighting for the Teamsters to become active politically. Welcome to the show, John.
All right, thank you, Steve. It's nice to be here.
So, John, this development of Sean O'Brien meeting with Donald Trump and it being used by the Donald Trump campaign organization to say that he's got support, what's going on?
You know, I understand that we're supposed to politically try to work with everybody, to achieve the ends of labor. But I'll clarify that by saying that there's absolutely nothing on the issues that affect labor that Donald Trump supports, nor has he ever supported. Hoffa tried this ploy when he ran last time, and Trump, basically spit back in our faces. Not only on the issue, we normally speak about labor in general. Our position is to represent the issues of labor. As a person who served in the military, I feel like we all fought. Many of my relatives, one of them for sure, an uncle, died in the defense of our country. We all have a right to vote. We all have a right to have an opinion. But when somebody's so blatantly unpatriotic, undemocratic, a straight up fascist, a straight up racist, these things do have a place in our positions and stances as men and women of labor. And to pussyfoot around with a guy who is all the things that I just mentioned, to even shake hands with the clown is a huge mistake. It's embarrassing. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk to Republicans, but we shouldn't give Donald Trump the time of day. He is no friend of labor, and frankly, he's anything but a patriot.
And when he was president, he attacked the NLRB. He wanted to cut funding. And the Republicans today say they are preparing to shut down the government, to throw possibly millions of contract workers and federal workers out of work and not to pay them. It seems that this kind of confrontational method that Donald Trump and the Republicans have could lead to a very dangerous situation in this country for the working class.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think to your point about the labor board, we need to understand that when he was president, he appointed attorneys. I believe one of them was from the infamous union busting law firm Jones and Day, that were union busted. I mean, this has never happened. We absolutely won 0 victories during the time his appointees sat at the labor board. The average member needs to know this, and I understand what this approach was all about, was trying to appease the 50% of our membership that did support Trump. But our job as labor people are not to try to appease our members. Our job is to explain to them why it's unhealthy for their livelihoods. We're not here to argue Roe v. Wade, although personally I find it offensive that they took away women's rights. We're here to argue for working men and women what's best for them. And the people that represent us have to work for our benefit. Central States Pension Fund, the tens of thousands of members that are now getting their full pensions and they're guaranteed into the future. Donald Trump had a chance to fix that. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump collectively sat on it for 4 years. Joe Biden fixed it. Now, am I saying that the Democratic Party is the saviors of the working class? No. And until we do something about that and change our political situation, and give ourselves a viable alternative, we have to deal with the lesser of two evils. And on a factual and structural basis, Joe Biden has done more to support us in the last 3 years than just about any president I've seen. I'm disappointed in the rail strike. I think that our members should have been allowed to strike, to do what they had to do to get what they deserved.
Well, the rail strike is another example of anti-labor laws. Railroad Labor Act has been used by these companies, rail companies, to basically impose what they want as far as the working conditions. But how do you defend the Democratic Party? And that's another issue, and which voted, including Bernie Sanders, on a bill that prevented workers from getting sick pay. How could that happen?
I was appalled. I mean, frankly, I'm appalled because they come courting us for our money, and we need to really think through why we give politicians money. First of all, we can't compete with any corporate structure dollar for dollar. That's sort of misrepresented in the press too. The amount of money unions contribute to campaigns, it pales in comparison to corporate America. But both parties are beholden to corporate America. The Supreme Court decided that in Citizens United, that money was free speech. It opened the floodgates of money and dark money to politicians of both parties. We need a voice beyond the two parties. We need to reform our political system and get the money out of it. It's corrupting everything. And again, the Democrats should not have done that. I'm sick of, given a choice of the lesser two evils, I'm gonna pick the lesser two evils. But we can't keep doing this regardless. I don't think these two parties are working in our best interest.
And of course, both parties are controlled by the billionaires.
Yes.
And both parties are privatizing Medicare Plus. Instead of having a national healthcare system, they're allowing privatization of what we have as far as a social system. But it seems that right now in 2024, we don't have a working class political alternative. There is no Labor Party in the United States. And we also face the danger of another insurrection. Now, the Vermont AFL-CIO passed a resolution saying that there should be a general strike against any threatened insurrection and coup. It did happen. There was an attempted coup and insurrection to prevent President Biden from taking office. Do you see the same dangers in this year?
I think we slept on all of this, going all the way back to the, this guy with I don't know what that hair thing is, coming down the elevator. We all just, said that couldn't possibly happen. There were plenty of people who suggested prior to January the 6th, 3 years ago, that Trump wouldn't leave office peacefully. They were correct about that. And so I wouldn't discount anything with the Supreme Court that's highly politicized, willing to strip people of their rights, but totally politicized. In my estimate, they're not jurists anymore. They pander to their masters. Anything is possible. I think, we need a vocal, outspoken labor movement. And we need another party. That's the difficult. We can be pragmatic. That's going to be difficult to achieve, but it is achievable. You don't win victories without taking on fights. We keep playing within the same system, and we're giving money to politicians. That's not going to solve our problems.
Well, if it's a system problem, part of that system problem is the trillions of dollars that are going to war, and the danger of a world war. The money that's going to, it seems like for Congress, the most important priority to getting back to work was to send more money to Ukraine and Israel for these wars. Are these wars something that working people should support? It seems the United States has 5 or 6 wars, more than 800 bases actually around the world. What's going on?
Well, I've served. I served on some of those bases, both stateside and also as a dependent. My father was a first sergeant in the Army. So the need for national defense is necessary, but let's take the situation in Gaza right now. The munitions that are killing innocent civilians have our Made in USA stamp on them. if we want to fix the world's problems, we can't fund genocide. And I know I'm going to offend some people when I say that. And I'm not justifying what happened on the 7th either, when the terrorists came across the border and killed innocent civilians. But there's the old adage that 2 wrongs don't make a right. By eradicating people's homes, infrastructure, creating, the diseases that come with those situations. You don't change people's minds. You don't want them to talk about peace. I mean, they're at the end of their rope right now. This isn't how you achieve peace, and so terrorism isn't the answer, but neither is responding with mass genocide, and in particular innocent children and civilians. That's beyond the pale.
And there was an effort in the Teamsters for Democratic Union to bring up a resolution supporting the ceasefire in Gaza. And apparently the leadership of TDU decided that wouldn't come up. And that apparently the UAW has taken a position against the war on Gaza. But the Teamsters, has there been any debate in the Teamsters national leadership about what's going on?
I would say, really the discussions about how to stay elected and attack anyone, including myself, who's willing to speak out against this. They won't touch it. It's the same sort of cowardice that meeting with Trump is. It's trying to avoid something that if you take a stance, you're going to piss some people off. I will get attacked for what I just said. That's okay. I'll go back to my service and my whole family, my father, my uncles. We serve that we might have a right to disagree. But if we can't have the conversation and you're a leader and you won't have a conversation because it's prickly, then maybe you're not really a leader.
So one of the issues is Teamsters for Democratic Union. You used to be a member of it. You were on the steering committee. You resigned at the last TDU convention. There was an issue of the war in Gaza that was prevented from coming up. And Sean O'Brien and Sean Fain of the UAW both attended, and the Teamster for Democratic Union said that was a great victory. What do you think about the lessons of the TDU and what happened at that convention, and what's happening now with Sean O'Brien giving Donald Trump some points?
It's almost hard for me to believe that they still call themselves TDU, because there's nothing democratic about what just transpired. Number one, they tried to, and it succeeded in keeping a couple of the Teamster mobilized people who proposed the amendment or the resolution. By the way, it's a resolution, which you alluded to. A resolution, is non-binding. It's a resolution. If you're a democratic organization, put it up for a vote. Don't table it. Let it stand or fall on its own merit, and then move on. But I think TDU looks a lot like the Teamsters now. They're deciding who can come to their convention. They're blackballing people, telling them they're not welcome. And now the cat's got their tongue. They apparently can't say anything bad about the current administration. I guarantee you, Ken Paff, David Levine, not a one of those people think meeting with Donald Trump is a great idea. He crossed the SAG picket line. Those people spoke out against that. Again, there's plenty of Donald Trump folly to fill up a day's worth of television in a documentary. And not one thing could be chalked off as a positive towards labor or the well-being of our country.
So what should people do who are in TDU?
Demand that the TDU find itself, or tell them, look, I'm going to find another venue to make change in, because TDU used to be a place you come and make change. This is a moment where we need change. And I think people should be quite aware of the fact that you don't get to run for office in the Teamsters without going to the convention and amassing a large enough number of delegates. This is going to be the first election that the government doesn't run. If you don't make that benchmark of delegates to qualify, you don't get on the ballot. And all those years of the government overseeing our elections so that we could have a free and democratic union, to see a white ballot in the first year that the government disappears is frightening. And for TDU not to realize that I made a mistake. I own it. I backed this guy. I made a mistake, and call me what you will. But it's not about me. Our members need a democratic election. They need choices, and a white ballot isn't going to further the interest of the Teamsters.
And the action against you by Sean O'Brien to throw you out of the union, you think that's part and parcel of what's going on as far as trying to eliminate any kind of independent voice?
The answer is yes, and it's shameful. And I'm not rolling over.
And the history of Trump, not just as president, but when he was in charge of housing in New York, which was getting federal funding, there was racist discrimination. He said that some Black youth should be killed who were charged in a murder, and it turned out that they hadn't done that. He, during the Charlotte situation where Nazis marched and against Jews and against other people, Trump said there were good people on both sides. The rise of fascism, first of all, you're concerned about the rise of fascism, and also the silence of unions about the rise of fascism.
Absolutely. I mean, it's right here. It's staring us in the face. I think if you would have could take the scenes that we've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years, in particular, since the rise of Trumpism, and we're able to teleport it back in time, folks would be shocked and say that couldn't happen in America, but it is, and we really can't continue down this path. I mean, we're becoming so divided. It just seems like, again, the common sense to settle issues, to compromise, to get things done has gone out the window, and everybody's stuck in an information bubble. They find a news source that they like. The amount of disinformation in this country is appalling. People that have beliefs such as that the riot on January the 6th was just a bunch of visitors that sort of got out of hand. How do we get there? And how do we fix it? I mean, I don't hear people trying to figure out ways to talk to one another instead of talk or yell at one another. And then, within our own politics, we marginalize people who have different views. I know that very well as a Teamster vice president.
And the Teamster members, the Black, Latino Teamsters, women members, what do you think should be their response to President O'Brien meeting with Trump, and Trump then using that as a vehicle to say that he's got support from the Teamsters?
I think it should be the same as this slightly overweight, balding white man, that it's offensive. It's appalling. He is who he is. If you can't see who he is or understand what he is, then I would like some time to sit down and talk with you. I mean, and let's go through it. Just like you said, the appointment of union busters, the straight up racism. I mean, I don't have time to go through it all, but it's blatantly clear that this man is a racist, a fascist. I mean, I could go on.
And the struggles of workers in this country, there are young people who are joining unions. There's a growth of unionism, and working people more and more see the union as a way to defend themselves. The government faces a shutdown this month. The Republicans have said it's our way or the highway as far as the changes they want to make on the border. You're in Texas. They say that there's an imminent crisis and that it requires that we shut down everything until they get what they want. What do you think about these kind of tactics of shutting down the government in order to get their political agenda passed?
Well, I think it's hostage taking when that's the only leverage you have, and that's what this is. We have a government that's had 3 separate but equal branches, obviously, designed to create compromise, and every time we get a majority government, people suggest that that's not good. The border crisis needs to be dealt with for many reasons. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. I mean, people, first of all, journey across another country that's almost as long as the United States to get to our borders. And Mexico has to be a part of that solution. The Christian right, I'm calling you out. Where are you in this when you would condone the abuse of innocent women and children again as they attempt to find better lives? Folks that argue that somehow they're coming here to take our union jobs. No, they're not coming. They're doing work that most Americans won't do. They're on roofs. They're doing nasty, dirty jobs that folks won't do. We couldn't eat without their support. We need to figure out a way. We've been talking about immigration reform since I guess the last meaningful legislation was passed during the Reagan years. I blame both sides on this. Just quit pointing fingers at one another, and let's sit down and talk about how we fix this thing.
Well, one of the issues in Texas is the Tesla plant. There's some Tesla plants, and apparently construction workers are dying on these plants. They were giving subsidies. Elon Musk got millions of dollars in subsidies near Austin for this plant. And yet, where is OSHA? OSHA in Texas is run by the federal government, by the Biden administration. There are around only 100 inspectors in Texas, OSHA inspectors for workers in Texas. I mean, it's dangerous. Texas has the highest rate of deaths in construction. It seems like there's a very serious health and safety crisis for workers in Texas and around the country as a result of a lack of enforcement of our health and safety rules.
And that's sort of going back to your point about funding the government. That's been part of this hostage-taking process over the years is the amount of monies they've sent to these agencies. So if you file an OSHA claim, it's going to be a while before somebody gets there. I will say I've got a labor board charge pending right now, and I was told straight up. I filed it last year. I was told straight up, we're going to be a while before we get to you. We are inundated with labor board charges. Part of that's related to the fact that there's so much organizing going on, the number of ULPs, but all of this goes back to politics again, and finding people who want to truly quit. Plenty of people pander to the working class, but who's really doing something to help the working class in a true and meaningful way? Unions, clearly, I wouldn't be as passionate as I am if I didn't believe unions are a large part of that answer. But when we're defunding organizations that support our rights to organize, and people can't get a labor agreement after they've won an election, it's not working. I mean, it goes back to corporate greed, and at some point there has to be the middle class and the working class have to unite and publicly oppose politics as it is. And
there have been struggles to build a Labor Party in the United States. There was a Labor Party advocate and Tony Mazzocchi. How do you see it taking place today? Because, as you say, there is a political vacuum. Workers are angry at both the Democrats and Republicans. Well, they see both parties as responsible for the crisis that we're in.
I would say even workers within the union are mad at the union. We have members who were sold the greatest UPS contract ever, and now we're several months into it, and they realize, the subcontractors are on the yard hauling their freight or their parcels off, and they're being laid off. So it's the institutional nature of all this, the institutional nature of unions who are corporate, the institutional nature of businesses and government. And it's at some point, there has to be some pushback. Revolution sounds like a wild word. I'm not in favor of doing what happened on January the 6th, but we have to get out in the streets, and we have to. I agree. Places like France where they have national strikes, we someday I'd love to see, sooner rather than later, a national strike in this country. Working men and women, anti-union, union, we're all the same. I mean, when I coached football and basketball for my kids, the non-union guys I worked with at competing companies, their kids played with me, on our teams. What are we doing? I mean, there's not a union bubble and a non-union bubble. There's the working class, and then there's those that control the money, the 2% that own the majority of the wealth in this country. I mean, what's hard to figure out about that?
And it seems, though, that the media, the corporate media, don't really want to educate people about even our own history of workers in this country, how unions were built.
Well, that's true. I mean, even public education here in Texas. My wife is a history teacher and retired history teacher now. She still tutors. I mean, she taught advanced placement history for many years. They've wiped out the textbook in 1970. I'd say 76 when I was taking my last government class in high school. It had a page and a half about the labor movement. I mean, there have been times in my career where I've been invited to go to the classroom and talk to workers, to kids about what it is to be a union member and what it means. We've been written out of textbooks, and people don't understand that, you know, our lives wouldn't look anything like they do today if it wasn't for the people that actually fought and died. You know, they died in our streets. They were murdered, fighting for our rights, and the same as our democracy. That slips away. It's, you know, I hate to use the frog in the water analogy, but as people become complacent and sort of self-protective of their own interests, we're slipping into this thing.
And in Texas, Greg Abbott has basically gone after the teachers union. He's trying to get rid of education workers unions. He's trying to prevent students from learning about history, working class history, Black history, Native American, brown history. And he's says that the states now should take over the federal government's job as far as immigration, and as passing bills to that effect, as well as telling the women of Texas they don't have the right to have abortion. They may die because they can't get an abortion, even when they have medical problems. Where's the labor movement in Texas? Is there any kind of united effort to challenge this frontal attack on democratic rights? I mean, also as far as union rights, I mean, the deaths in Texas on the job seem to be growing in Texas as far as health.
The teachers' situation in Texas is they don't have the right to collective bargaining. You can belong to an association. Some of the associations affiliate with like the TSE, I believe it is, they can affiliate with different teachers unions, but they literally don't have rights. They have to renew their contract every year. One of the big issues that happened in this legislative session this last time was, normally the Texas legislature only meets every 2 years. Abbott kept it open and kept trying to push this charter school thing through. So this is a long time attempt to further, and it has great racial impact, right? Because so they want to give vouchers to the folks in North Dallas who live in these McMansions, who are sending their kids to private schools already. So they're going to be compensated for sending their kids to private schools while they take money away from public schools. And then they use the culture wars of books like Huck Finn being somehow evil and they need to be stripped out of the public schools. It's all a diversion to basically poor folks in poor districts getting less money isn't going to fix their situation, isn't going to raise them out of poverty. But giving rich people more money is Donald Trump did that too, with his tax cuts. I guess the offensive thing to me is we have members that make really good money. I mean, that make a lot more money than I do, frankly, and that's fine. I'm very, very comfortable with that. That think that they're voting for these crazy Republican ideas is good for them because they make a little bit of money. They don't understand they're not rich. They think that they're not rich. As to women's rights, no one should have a right. I mean, you can have your own personal feeling about abortion. That's fine. You can believe in God if you choose to, or not, if you don't choose to, but you don't have a right to impose those beliefs on other people. That's what this democracy was founded on, by the way.
And the theocratic state, you have religious fundamentalists who want to fund religious education for Christians, not obviously for Muslims or religions they don't agree with. And you have a situation in Texas where they're taking away the right of school districts to have their own elected school boards. Do you think that's part of the attack on democracy in Texas and nationally?
Well, absolutely. I think there was a strategy by the right wing to start winning elections all the way down to dog catcher if they could, and all the way up, and that's how they groom a bench of candidates for their policies. But so many of these policies are hurting people. The attacks on gender identity. Let what are we doing in people's bedrooms? You got no business in anyone's bedroom. It's appalling. First of all, read your Bible. I've read it many times. And they used to have this "What would Jesus do?" thing. Read the Bible and see what you think Jesus would have done. He wouldn't be doing this stuff. So if you're a Christian, act like one.
And did any of these issues, I mean, they're issues affecting working people, Black, brown, gay, lesbian, I mean, all kinds of issues. What is the union, the Teamsters Union, doing to educate people about these issues nationally?
They have a human rights commission. I don't see a lot of that. I don't get a lot of reports on that. We have the conferences, which anybody that's been in these major unions understands. We fly people to Vegas, or I guess women's conference going to be in Puerto Rico this year, and we meet in these conferences. Usually, it's officers of the local union and their supporters or stewards. That's money that could really go to educating members and supporting causes. And as an organizer, one of the biggest issues I used to feel upset about was whenever we ran a campaign and we wanted to engage the community, we would, we'd go out to the religious community or environmental groups, whatever groups we could apply pressure to a company to achieve a win. We showed up, we asked for their support, and then we roll out. We don't stay in the fight, and that's what I don't see a real. What I see is, and particularly with this administration now, who use Berlin Rosen now for their PR. It's all PR now.
And Rosen, I mean, they've outsourced the public relations, the media to another company. Isn't that what they're arguing against as far as outsourcing?
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising that people of faith, if their faith isn't right, are hypocrites. It's not surprising that labor advocates could be hypocrites as well. But I will say this: my whole lifetime as a union member, I've seen, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't just thrilled about what being a union member meant. But I haven't seen a lot of change. I as a matter of fact, I've seen things become more and more entrenched in sort of the corporate mentality. And the labor movement, was it founded on that? Didn't flourish on that. As a matter of fact, when we adopted that, we've slowly shrunk. All we're doing is managing the demise of the Teamsters right now. We're not doing anything that inspires people anymore.
And of course, a lot of Amazon workers want to get organized. There was an organizing campaign when Sean O'Brien was running. He said one of his goals was to organize Amazon workers. There's a strike of contractors to Amazon in Palmdale, California, that's been going on. It seems that Amazon has been able to fight them to prevent them from organizing and retaliating against Teamsters who do work for a subcontractor at Amazon. What do you think the path is to organize Amazon workers? And you think it requires a real mobilization of all the labor movement and communities, it's not just one union issue?
This Amazon has more money than the entire labor movement combined. They're one of the richest corporations in the world. They, like many rich corporations, they play by different rules. In Europe, we get unions are a lot stronger. Some of that is because the politics of these countries give unions better standing. In places like Germany, we actually have a seat at the table with the corporations on their boards. But
and in Sweden, there's a strike now of Tesla mechanics and other unions. The Dockers union is not moving any cars. Sanitation workers are not moving material. The postal workers said they're not going to deliver licenses. Right. They don't have a Taft-Hartley law that prevents solidarity action. And this is a major struggle for workers now in Sweden, and supporting this struggle because they're trying to organize as well at Germany, where Elon Musk has an assembly plant near Berlin.
Right. Look, it's first of all, the Teamsters aren't reaching out to anybody. I mean, they didn't reach out to anybody during the UPS contract. We don't have the resources to organize Amazon. You know, the strategy of leveraging communities and religious groups and all these different that has to be part of it. But we need to mobilize the whole labor movement, and again, get out of the labor movement bubble. We need a massive effort to bring this company to its knees. And you know, I just saw something about workers in a facility in New York City where the gas was turned on, and they had a leak, and they sat in there for 4 hours before the company got them out of the building. The blatant disregard for, you know, people not being able to go to the bathroom. Seriously. And frankly, that I know situations at UPS per se, absolutely, where this has happened as well. This is not to blame the union for it, it's to blame the company. But for crying out loud, we're human beings. We can't stand for this. And so it's got to be a big movement, but you can't sit in your own bubble and act like a bully, puff your chest up, call people names, and think that, well, we're the Teamsters and everybody's scared of us. No one's scared of us. They'd be scared of all of us if we united. But when you demagogue other unions and other groups, people don't want anything to do with you.
But he's threatening to get in cage fights by senators.
Right. Childish, embarrassing, as much as the picture, childish and embarrassing. And frankly, you know, if you're going to act like a child and challenge somebody to fight, follow through with it.
Does that belong in the president of the Teamsters Union? It seems, rather than threatening to get in a cage fight with a senator, how about mobilizing 100 or 500,000 members in Washington, D.C., saying we want the right to organize. We're going to fight for the right to organize at Amazon. It seems like those are two different things, two different tracks.
Well, and the way to do that would be to actually start to connect to the membership, not use a PR firm, literally connect to the membership. And change doesn't come without grassroots. Anybody who's organized anything, I don't care what kind of organizing it is, it has to start at the grassroots level. It has to start with ideal leaders and moving people to action. And a top-down model of leadership only separates you that much more from the members. You hide the contents of a contract from the membership until the very end. When you put things out that say this contract's the greatest contract ever, and 6 months later, people are realizing this is the same old crap.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us on Work Week. We've been talking with John Palmer, International Vice President of the Teamsters, about the struggle in the Teamsters and other issues facing the working class here and around the world. So thanks for joining us, John.
It was great, Steve. Thank you.